In the book of Revelation, there are 6 different beasts that are mentioned. We have number 1, the beast, the living creature that surround the throne of God, that worship God. Beast number 2 is the dragon, the red dragon, which represents Satan. And then we have also the beast from this, the beast from the earth. That is the false prophet that's going to work together with the Antichrist. Now, these 3 last beasts that I'm talking about, they are interwoven and they are mostly misunderstood in the scriptures. They are the beast from the sea, and then the beast from abyss, and then we have the beast on which the oar rode on. That's the beast with 7 heads that the oar rode on. Now, these 3 beasts, these last 3 beasts that I mentioned, are mostly seen as one by many. And therefore, whatever attribute, whatever is done by any of these beasts is considered to be done by one. Now, we need to understand beasts in the book of Revelation, with regard to these last 3, are 3 entities that work together or that are fixed together in the end time. So these 3 entities entails number 1, the Antichrist himself, who will be the human king of the last kingdom in the history of man. The Bible calls it the 8th kingdom. It's the 8th kingdom. It will be part of the 7, and he will be the head of the 8th that will be formed, which will be the last kingdom in the history of man. Then number 2 is the kingdom that the beast also represent, the kingdom that this beast from the sea will dominate over. This kingdom will be an extension of, a combination of 7 kingdom territories that will be ruled by 10 different kings at the end time. I've explained that before, so you can go back to my past video. I've already explained the division of all these kingdoms. But the last one, which I'm talking about today, the third of the beasts that is being misunderstood as one, is the supernatural angelic prince of the old Grecian Empire that will revive the old Grecian Empire, and then through Antichrist control the affair of the entire kingdom. Now, it has been proven that the kingdom of the world are controlled by spiritual princes. There are different princes that controls all these territories. There's a king. There are princes that control the Islamized nations. They control the Western life, and then they make corruption, killing to prevail in certain geographical locations. These are princes in charge of kingdom, and they cannot be separated from the kings and from the kingdom itself. So that is why they are interwoven. At the end time, the prince from abyss, the beast from abyss, will control the affairs of the final, or the last kingdom, the 8th kingdom. That's the kingdom of Antichrist. It is this beast from abyss that will control the affair. That is why it's a hidden personality in all the texts that relate to Antichrist. It's only being referred to when necessary as the priest that comes out of the bottomless pit. And that is all. What we know is that every action this beast takes is taken through the personality of Antichrist. For example, killing of the 2 witnesses was done by this beast, but using the instrumentation of the Antichrist. The question we need to answer include, is this beast from the sea, which is Antichrist, is it different from the beast from abyss? What proofs that the scripture has to back up this claim? What are the assignments of these 2 beasts at the end time? What do they need to carry out independently? And why do both need the assistance of each other? Why do they need to cooperate together in the end time to succeed? And then what are the uniqueness of these people working together as the beast? You are welcome to the Diary of Truth. This is Olusheye Matthias. But from the past video, I did mention that one of the achievements, one of the things that the beast from abyss will achieve through the Antichrist will be to conquer series of war. It will fight series of war and it will overcome. I said one of those wars will include overcoming the 3 out of 10. That's the 3 kingdoms that we find in the North Africa, according to Daniel chapter 11. Daniel named them as Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya. These three he will overthrow. And then when he overthrow these three, all the other 10 kingdoms that will be formed within the territory of the old Rome in the end time will submit their power to the Antichrist peacefully. And then it will not stop there. We said, but when it takes kingdom at the middle of the tribulation period, which will be at the end of the lesser tribulation, he will fight more battles because he will hear news, he will hear rumors will reach him that this is where Russia comes in, because Russia will be the next. Russia is in the north of Syria, from where Antichrist will come. But I said, if you are to look at, or if you are to say that Antichrist will be from Russia, when Russia eventually takes over all the kingdoms from Russia to all the other world, where will this new enemy come from? What country is not of Russia? There is no other country. Therefore, this is an emphasis that the Antichrist, or the prince, the king of the north, is actually Syria. So after the 10 kingdoms have submitted to the Antichrist, another war will break out between the 10 kingdom, which is where Antichrist is ruling, and some country north and east of his kingdom, which are going to be Russia, Germany, and other kingdoms that are towards the north and the east of the Middle East, where he's going to rule. In the middle of the 7 years, this battle against the north will start. You can find that battle in Daniel chapter 11 from verse 44. So they will go and fight this battle, and this battle will continue until the end of the tribulation. And this will have given Israel power to mobilize and to prepare to battle, to war against the Antichrist army. And then the news will reach him from where he is fighting with the north and the east, that revolt has broken out, and then he will finish fighting with those people and win them. And then with the combined army of his 10 kingdoms and these nations east and north of his kingdom, he will come over and then soliciting with the help of demons, the three frogs that will go out of him, the Antichrist, and then the false prophet, and Satan himself. These three demons will also help to gather all the other nations that are not under his territory, to persuade them, to gather them to meet his mobilized army of 10 kingdoms, kings of the north and east of his kingdom. They will join these two sets of armies, and then he will mobilize them against Israel. This will be done by, number one, the Antichrist, who is the PRO, the public figure to Satan and his demon. But then Satan will be the one, the great engineer of all this battle. But then he's going to be using this demon, who is also the prince behind this kingdom. This prince will be active in mobilizing and in winning, just like he helped the ancient lords and kings to win. Things like Alexander the Great, because the same spirit that helped Alexander the Great to win the ancient world will be the same prince that will help this king, the last king in human history, to win. And then I also talked about the battle that will be mobilized in the heavenly places. This battle will be the battle between the angels of God and the angels of Satan, fallen angels. And I said this battle will also happen at the same time at the middle of the tribulation period. In fact, the scripture says there is war in heaven, because Michael and his angel fought, and the dragon too, but the dragon lost, and his place was not found in heaven. I said, although many people refer this to be the fall of Satan years before the earth was even established, but that is not is a reference to that, because he made reference to that by mentioning 1/3 of the angels, and which means it is the 1/3 of the angels that fell with Lucifer at that time that will still be involved in this battle of the future. It's going to be a battle to dislodge Satan and his angels from the heavenly places where they have their thrones and principalities and power operating, and they will be sent to the earth. And that is why the voice came and there was rejoicing. There was a declaration that heaven should rejoice, because the devil has been cast down to the earth, because he deceived the servants of God, and he accused them day and night before God. So from that moment, from the middle of the Great Tribulation, the space, the access of Satan to heavenly places will be ended. And so the earth will be their final habitation. And that is why the Great Tribulation, the last 3.5 years, is going to be worse. And that is why everyone should be prepared to go with a flight, so that you will not be here at that moment, because it's going to be a serious time. Then it is even that battle also that will produce the final battle, the battle of Armageddon. Because that is it. From the time Satan is cast down to the earth, he knows that his time is short. And then the lies he has been telling, the lies he has been producing, or he has been giving all his angels, that they were going to dominate the earth forever, and that they were going to overthrow God some days. They will want to fulfill that. He will mobilize his armies, and they will target them towards Jerusalem, so that the purpose of Christ coming to redeem Israel and to establish eternal earthly kingdom will not be fulfilled. I mean, he will mobilize all the soldiers in his kingdom, and the one dominated out of the kingdom of the north and the east. He will gather them together, and other nations that will be deceived by these three frogs that will go out in the end time to deceive, to bring all nations, to persuade them to join, will also be mobilized, and then they will meet at Megiddo. But apart from that, we also saw that Antichrist will establish, just like I've just said, he will establish the Grecian Empire. And this will be the handwork. The main reason why the beast from the abyss will come back is to establish the kingdom, that's the Grecian Empire, which he once controlled. It will come out to revive it. And that will be the 8th kingdom of Antichrist. And that is why Antichrist will be a Grecian king who will rule at the end time. That will work together with the beast from abyss. One thing that is unique about the operation of Alexander the Great, which Antichrist will also will duplicate, is that he was able to achieve or to conquer so vast a kingdom within a very short time. Alexander the Great lived for only 33 years. And then within the 33 years he lived, he spent 13 years fighting battles. And then this battle that he fought against the strongest nations, empire of his own time. And with limited resources, he was able to win. I did say in the last video that, in one of my past videos, that Alexander the Great had only 35,000 soldiers. And he has a provision of $75,000 to start the war with. With the small resources and with these people he bought over, he was able to win Persian Empire that took in a lot of kingdoms, like 3-4 kingdoms, which included in Egypt, Babylon, and even the territories of his own cover of Persia. This one kingdom was able to overcome this vast nation that had about $11 million provision with additional other millions in dollars provision for the war, and also which has hundreds of thousands of soldiers. He was still able to win them within 13 years, the last periods of his life. He couldn't have achieved this feat without a force backing him up. And I did say that force is this prince. Antichrist is going to fulfill it in just 3.5 years. That is how smart or how intelligent the Antichrist is going to be. He will be smarter than Alexander the Great by so much degrees. Because as at the time Alexander the Great conquered Persia, Kingdom of Rome was not in that territory. Rome was an independent and a power on their own, feared in their own right. So he was able only to cover the past 5 kingdoms, including himself. The Antichrist, the last beast, the last king in the human race, will occupy. He will have 7 heads, which represent the 7 kingdoms that have been conquered in history up till the time of Antichrist. That means the past 6 kingdoms with the one kingdom of 10 kingdoms, that's which is the 7th kingdom. He will have all this territory all to himself, and that will happen within just 3.5 years, because he will conquer these 10 kingdoms by the middle of the tribulation period. That's the first 3.5 years. The demon will be so desperate to fulfill what he wanted to use, or what he wanted to fulfill at the end, at the last time, what he wanted to fulfill at the last time before he was captured. He wants to fulfill it within a very short time, and that's being backed up by all the power and the influence of Satan himself. They will be able to fulfill this success within a very short time in order for the last kingdom to come up. He will also fulfill some things that Antiochus fulfilled. Now, when Antiochus is one of the kings that inherited the kingdom or the throne in the lineage of Alexander the Great. Remember, The kingdom of his father, where he started to fight, where Alexander started from before he expanded the kingdom, was Greece and Macedon. And this kingdom of Greece and Macedon, this division of Greece and Macedon, was ruled by Cassander. So Cassander ruled Greece and Macedon, where Alexander actually came from. But then another division was ruled by Lysimachus. Lysimachus ruled Asia Minor, which combines the present-day Turkey and Thrace. So he combined these two kingdoms together under Lysimachus. But the third one is Syria. Syria merged with Babylon, and this kingdom ruled by Seleucus. And then finally, Egypt was taken and was ruled by Ptolemy. These are the first kings, as prophesied in the book of Daniel, that took over the kingdom of Greece after the death of Alexander the Great. Daniel had that record. And these are the four horns into which the notable horn on the he-goat broke into. Now, in the lineage of this, the king of the north, which is Syria, because, like I said, Syria and Babylon, Syria and Egypt stood out among these four. Because the prophecy of Daniel in Daniel chapter 11 focuses on these two kingdoms majorly. All those stories are battles that took place between the king of the north and the king of the south. Not only one king, there are a series of kings that ruled between chapter 3, where Alexander the Great came in, and then chapter 35, when Antiochus ruled and defiled the temple. So in that case, there are a series of kings. But the thing is, both kingdom produced kings that were fighting against each other as far as territory is concerned until the intervention of Rome. These are all written in prophecy. Now, we know that in the lineage of Seleucus, there is this man, there's this guy, which is a prototype of Antichrist. Antiochus Epiphanes was a picture of Antichrist. In the way he took kingdom, in the way he operated, he won so many of his kingdom around, in the way he fought, in fact, in the way he tackled Israel, persecuted Israel. In fact, it was only under him in the kingdom of, within the reign of Alexander the Great, within the reign of Grecian Empire. This man, Antiochus Epiphanes, persecuted Israel most. In fact, it was like his attack was made. It was the one that fulfilled the part of abomination of desolation, which Antichrist will fulfill in the end time. In fact, many times, this part, the actions of Antiochus Epiphanes, is always confused by many with the activity of Antichrist at the end time. They quote those passages for future Antichrist. Meanwhile, as we speak, it is history. It has happened. And Antiochus fulfilled some of these prophecies in the book of Daniel. You look at what happens there and relate it to the passage that relate to Antichrist, the future Antichrist, you will see there is a thin line of difference. They are almost alike. They are alike. So Antiochus Epiphanes is an example, is a prototype. It's a picture of future Antichrist. Daniel chapter 11. He said, as such, okay, let me read verse 30. For the ship of Shittim shall come against him, against Antiochus. That's talking about Rome. So the ship of Shittim here is Rome. And then that talks about the time when he wanted to fight Egypt, and Rome intercepted. And he gave an excuse that they told him to withdraw. And he said he was going to contact his friend before he can give them answer. Then these ambassadors of Rome drew a circle around him, demanding an immediate answer from him, that he shouldn't cross that line until he gave them the answer. Then he yielded. He returned, even when he was almost 7 miles before he reached Alexandria in Egypt. He had to return in obedience to the Rome. And then he became angry. When he was in Egypt, he also had a rumor that the person he installed, it's a long story actually, Jason was bribed him earlier so that he would be the high priest in Jerusalem. But eventually, Antiochus collected money from somebody who paid him a higher bribe. And so when he was in Egypt, he heard that Jason, to overthrow Menenius, his chosen high priest, his chosen priest in Jerusalem. Then he took his army to Jerusalem to fight. So Antiochus slew 40,000 Jews. He took another 40,000 captives, sold as slaves. And then he entered into the temple at Jerusalem, and then He boiled swine's flesh, and sprinkled the broth in the temple and on the altar. He didn't stop there. He broke into the Holy of Holies. He took away the golden vessels and other sacred treasures from the temple. He didn't stop there. He reinstalled Millennius, and then so that he can control the activity going on in the temple. But then, in order, after setting his loyal disciple, he set the image of Zeus, the pagan god. He set it in the temple, and then the Hellenized Jews, they cooperated. And that is the level of desecration that this man, Antiochus, committed to the temple and to the God of in Jerusalem. So this is a picture, and this is what is relayed in Daniel chapter 11, verse 30. Says, and the ship of Shittim shall come, that's Rome, like I said before, against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return, and have indignation against the holy covenant, that's against Israel. And have intelligence with them that forsake the holy people, these Hellenized Jews. And then with Millennius, who he will reinstall to take over the temple, and so that he will be able to administer worship of Zeus, the god of Jupiters. So all these were done by this man, this wicked man, Antiochus Epiphanes. And then you will see, he said, and arms shall stand on his side, verse 31, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. I said, as at the time of Daniel writing it was a prophecy, but in our own day, it is history, it has happened. It happened, this passage was fulfilled at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus Epiphanes installed Millennius as a priest again, and then placed the image of idol in the temple and asked people to worship. And at that time, those who are weak, the backsliding, the Hellenized Jew, they obeyed, they were worshiping in order to please the ruling king and to avoid problems. But if you read further, verse 32 says, and such as do wickedly against covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. This passage talks about the Maccabees, because among the Jews there were zealous people who were zealous of their religion, of Judaism, of the activity in the temple. They wanted the worship of true God in the temple. They wanted to keep the law, the ceremonial law of sacrifices. And these people will rise against the rule of terror within the temple, and then they will fight. They will fight. Many of them will be killed, and that war took a couple of years. They were defeated, but eventually they won, and they were able to bring about sanity to the temple. So Antiochus, because of all these things, fulfilled all what Antichrist will do at the end time. Because when Jesus talked about the abomination, he said, when you shall see the abomination that is prophesied by Daniel, let him that readeth understand. You need to understand that this passage has two applications, that's of the abomination. If the abomination, this abomination was, number one, a picture of Antiochus, who came to defy the temple and the worship of God, to stop the temple, and then to make an idol in the temple of God to be worshipped. And the future Antichrist will do the same. He will put an idol in the future temple that will be built for that purpose. And then another area where Antiochus Epiphanes will portray the future Antichrist is in the area of deception and flatteries. Deceptions and flattery is one of the attributes of behavior of this man. If you look at Daniel chapter 11, verse 21, and it says, in his estate, that's the estate of Seleucus IV, that's the father of Antiochus Epiphanes, in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom. And this is the same thing with Antichrist. He's going to be a small man, somebody that they will not even attribute leadership or authority to. And that's why the Bible calls him the little horn, compared to the other 10. But then, this little horn will rise deceptively, and then he will still be able to conquer. This is what Antiochus did. He said, and he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. The same way Antichrist will do. Now, what did Antiochus do? He was on his way to Rome when his father, Seleucus IV, died. Now, when Seleucus IV died, he was poisoned by Hellenodorus. Hellenodorus was eyeing the seat of power, and then he had it. But on his way to, after he visited Rome, he came back peaceably, and then hid himself in the kingdom. And then he flattered Emuranes, the king of Pergamos. And then he also flattered his brothers, who are strong, who had their own kingdom, who had strength on their own and armies. He flattered them and won them over to his side. He also went ahead to flatter Rome. He flattered them and sent ambassadors of peace. And he caught their favor. He submitted to their services, were ready to serve them in any regard that they wanted concerning his kingdom and concerning the entire kingdom. So he paid them tribute. So he won Rome to himself. Apart from that, he went ahead to flatter the citizens, that the Syrians. He became a normal person. He became a humble person. And then he will go to the marketplaces, gist, drink. In fact, that is where he got the alias of illustrious madman. He was always joking, playing with different people, all classes of people. They knew him. And so because he was famous among them, he won their trust. He won their support. And with these people he peacefully won to himself, he was able to face Elidorus. And then he got the kingdom. Antichrist is going to do the same thing. In fact, by the time Antichrist comes to the scene of the world, it will bring the Muslim, the war that is going on in Palestine presently, Syria, and then Lebanon, and all the environments. This man will come and bring peace to this issue, the problem that both the Jew and the Muslims have concerning about the Temple Mount. The issues around the Temple Mount, it will come in and then bring peace, pacify the Muslims, pacify the Jews, pacify the neighboring countries, and all will join together. In fact, they will allow the Jews to have their temple on the Temple Mount, which has been a very difficult assignment for so many centuries now. He will come in and do it peaceably, because he will be a man of wisdom, a smart guy, and then he will win, and people will submit to him because of his wisdom, because of his flattery, because of his deception, and because of the ability to appeal to the conscience, or to appeal to the emotions of people. People will submit to him, apart from the fact that he will be a very strong military man. All these things done by Antiochus Epiphanes will also be repeated by Antichrist. Number one, he's going to obtain the kingdom of the 10 kingdom by flatteries, by deception. He will deceive all the parts, and they will believe in him, and then he will take over the kingdom of those territories. Number two, he was going to be a strong man. He will fight a lot of battles like Alexander, his ancestors, did. He was going to fight within the 10 kingdoms, such that he will defeat 3 and others will submit. He will go ahead to fight with Russia and Germany and all the other kingdoms north and east of his kingdom, and then he will overpower them, he will overcome them. And then after overcoming them, he will bring them over. He will subjugate them, all these nations, and they will all be under him. And he will use them to fight the final battle of Armageddon. But apart from that, it was at the middle of the year, like Antiochus Epiphanes did, by polluting the temple. He will set his image in the temple and defile the temple, place an idol there, and ask the Jews to worship. And that will bring about revolt. And then that will be the beginning of the tribulation against Israel and persecution against them. So like I said before, the abomination of desolation that is found in Daniel chapter 11 verse 31 here is not actually the one that Christ spoke about, that the Antichrist will do. It's only a picture, because this abomination has been fulfilled. But this abomination fulfilled by Antiochus Epiphanes will be repeated in the end time to fulfill the prophecy of the real image. This is a shadow, but the real image will be fulfilled in the last king of Greece, which is Antichrist.